KSL Broadcast House. This is Sunday Edition with Doug Wright.
And a good morning to you. A happy Mother's Day to many of you, and welcome to Sunday Edition. This week we're talking with the Utah Board of Education about the all-day kindergarten that was just passed in the legislative session, and of course, guiding our growth program with Envision Utah and how we're adapting and preparing for the rapid population growth that's happening here in the great state of Utah. But first, I'm talking with former State Senator Scott Howell, who has a special perspective on the presidential campaign and the run for the Democratic nomination. And Scott, thank you so very, very much for joining us on the program today.
Thrilled to be here, Doug.
You know, I've known Scott for such a long, long time. When you were state senator and, of course, the Democratic leader on Capitol Hill, when you ran for the Senate of the United States against our former senator, Orrin Hatch. Absolutely, that was a monumental event.
Oh yeah, I did it twice. I didn't learn the first time. I'm a slow learner.
But I so appreciate tapping into your expertise. And the first thing that I'd like to do is get a little handle on things stand. You have run as a Democrat in the state of Utah. And as you look at the playing field that we're anticipating right now, and President Biden has announced that he's going to run again. Gosh, we saw a town hall meeting on CNN with former President Donald Trump. It looks like this is going to be a repeat performance. But let's talk about Joe Biden and how especially our Utah Democrats. The polling numbers aren't that great for the president right now in the state of Utah.
Well, typically, they wouldn't be great for any Democrat running in the state of Utah. It's a pretty red state, and I think that the conservatism has gone so far to the right that there's not good centrist thinking with, there's three parties. There's the Republican Party, there's the MAGA Party, and there's the Democratic Party. And I think that far, far right has really taken over in terms of what's happening. The president continues to be focused on the most important things, and if you look at his record, I think that's how we judge people. And his record is really pretty good. He got through the pandemic. He got through the funding that he put out there for stability in the marketplace, the PPP loans that went out and all those things. And I think at the end of the day, his tweet was spot on when he said, "Do you want 4 more years of that?" when he was responding to CNN's with President Trump. And for us, we've always, in our state, I know a lot of people have said he's old and he can't do this anymore. Well, we're kind of a unique state because a lot of our leaders are well into their 90s, at the top of the food chain in our faith and everything. And I think the president, I've known him for 40 years. I think he's probably gone a little bit more left than what I was hoping. But I think if he gets back on that centrist path, that he will do just fine. But his record is really what stands out. And I think for most Utahns, if they can get over the fact that he's a Democrat, but look at what he's accomplished, I think there'll be a lot of centrist people who will reconsider their vote. And yeah, the polling's not great. I'll be the first to admit that.
What about Title 42? The border has been such a hot issue for such a long time now. Title 42, and I'm hearing thoughtful commentators, yes, they're blaming the president, but they're also blaming Congress, going like we didn't know this was going to expire. That sounds familiar, doesn't it, with budgets and so on?
100%. Title 42, I think Mitt Romney is on to this really well. We just have to take this on, but it's such a great fundraising mechanism for both sides. So the politics get involved instead of thinking about the human toll that's happening out there. We thought there was going to be a bigger rush. The president sent down 12,000 troops, and just as early as about a half hour ago, I was watching. It's still under control. They're containing it right now. Now, Title 8 would have released some of those people to go out on their own recognizance and be able to report back in 60 days. But the judge overruled that, and now DOJ has to go fight back on it. But, Doug, I blame both sides. I'm an equal opportunist on what we've done on immigration. We haven't done a good job. We've done a terrible job. We need leaders. We need leaders that will sit down and forget the politics And those undocumented kids that are here, at no fault of their own, I mean, it's a travesty that the Dreamers can't find a pathway to be great citizens.
Yeah, boy, that has been a hot potato. And where people say send them back to where they came from. Well, most of them, they have no memory of any old country. Now they have no relatives left in an old country. So where do they go? You know, we're almost out of time, but there are a couple of more things. In just a moment, we're going to talk about all-day kindergarten. It pays sometimes to have a little bit of a corporate memory here. I remember you and I talking about all-day kindergarten, not years ago, but decades ago.
20 years ago, I ran that bill. It passed. They never funded it. So when the governor did a ceremonial signing, I was really pleased when he said, some of you out here, and they invited me to the signing, have waited for 20 years to get this bill. And I'm just grateful. Who says Utah's not progressive?
That's right.
Yeah, 20 years.
That's right. And we're going to talk with the state board coming up in just a moment. Scott, we just have about a minute left. And again, I thank you so much for joining us. It's a special day. It's a Mother's Day. And boy, when I think of all the great women that have influenced our various lives over the years, it's remarkable. This is a very important day.
You know, Doug, I was honored to attend the funeral of your mother, and you have written this wonderful piece on life's great leaders, and your tribute to your mother, A Life Worthwhile, it resonated in my heart. It says, one of my earliest memories of my mother was sitting around a card table, those struggling with reading, kids and adults alike, and my mother was teaching them. And I love this statement. You said, Mom has always been willing to drop everything in order to help. When I think of Albert Einstein's quote, only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile. My mother immediately felt that.
Scott, I appreciate you joining us on Sunday Edition.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. And coming up next, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about all-day kindergarten and other things, education. Stay with us. Our next guest on the program today is from the Utah State Board of Education. Christine Elegante is with us. And Christine, you played a role in helping secure funding for the all-day kindergarten program that has passed this past legislative session. Tell us a little bit about how you were involved and how did you help make that happen?
Yeah, so I am a K-3 literacy specialist at the Utah State Board of Education, and one of my responsibilities is to be the strategy leader for Strategy 1B, which is all about expanding full-day kindergarten access and providing a high-quality kindergarten program. And as part of that was to expand access to full-day kindergarten. It's something that our Utah State Board of Education has made a top priority the last couple of sessions. So I got to be one of those people who got to be on an amazing coalition team. We had a lot of partners who were joining our team, Voices for Utah Children, United Way, just to name a few, Utah PTA. It was a great group of people.
This was something that has been discussed in the state of Utah. As a matter of fact, our previous guest, Scott Howell, when he was in the Senate as the minority leader, this was a real priority for him. Why do you think it took so long, Christine?
I think there's a lot of reasons of why it took so long. One of the things that first comes to my mind is in Utah, we have been doing half-day kindergarten for a long time. I am from Utah. I've grown, raised in Utah. And when I was 5 years old, I attended a half-day kindergarten program. And that was just the norm. And I think here in our state, that has been the norm for decades. And even though it's been something that's been done in a lot of the other states, Utah has just kind of kept doing the same thing that it has been doing.
As I was driving into the studio today, I passed the elementary school in our neighborhood, and it just made me feel real good to see the sign on the fence out there that said it's time to enroll in kindergarten. And I thought of the great things that have happened, and congratulations to everybody up at the state level and those who work so hard throughout the state to make this happen. Our school year is now coming to a close, and what changes have we seen this past year? This is kind of, I hate to use the word normal in any form or fashion, but allegedly we kind of went back to normal after the pandemic here. What has this past year been like? What have we learned, and how have we kind of melded the things that we learned during the pandemic together to make this last school year work?
So this last school year, as you were saying, has been more of a normal school year in terms of we're coming out of a pandemic, right, where we had some disruptions in our schooling. This has been a very typical normal year. And now that we're kind of at the end of that school year, we can look back and celebrate on some of the things we have learned. And we've been on a journey in our state. We have been working on improving literacy in our state the last year or so with the COVID funding that was available, the ESSER funding. We have been able to provide teachers with some professional learning in the science of reading, which has really been very impactful in our state. And we're going to continue to do that work and see that professional learning implemented in our classrooms. And I think we're going to see a lot of great things happening across our state and all of our classes with literacy outcomes. For one thing, we've also learned that teachers are really, really important. They are an important piece for educational experience. Replacing teachers with computer programs just isn't working. It didn't work for all of our kids, right? You can't replace what happens in that classroom, and that instruction that happens in that classroom is vital to the success for students and their learning. And I think that lesson that we learned is so valuable. And we are very lucky in our state. We actually were one of the few states to were able to open the 2021 school year. It was a little different, but for Utah, most of our schools were in session, which was remarkable. We actually have come out of this pandemic looking a lot better than a lot of our states. We still have a lot of work to do, though.
I come from a family of teachers all around me. I'm the only one that went astray, and look what happened to me. But I have a great appreciation for teachers. And as we are recording this program on a Friday afternoon, this is one of the very last days of the Teacher Appreciation Week. Let's talk about the gratitude that we all ought to be. And are we sharing this gratitude for our teachers?
Yeah, I just saw a post by our governor and his wife, appreciation post. And I just want to echo some of the things that they said, as we close this Teacher Appreciation Week. The Utah State Board of Education, we'd also like to express our gratitude for our kindergarten teachers and all of Utah's amazing educators. They have worked so hard to inspire students and to shape a better future. We are asking a lot of our teachers, and they are rising to the occasion, and they are doing it with grace, and they are doing amazing things in their classrooms.
I ran into a longtime friend of mine that I hadn't seen for a while. We went to elementary school together at Libby Edward Elementary. And, the first thing after we just kind of, got to know each other real quickly again, we started talking about the great teachers we had back when we were in elementary school. Our 5th grade teacher, my 4th grade teacher, and a great teacher makes all the difference. Christine, I can't thank you enough for joining us today on Sunday Edition. And thank you. We'll look forward to see what happens with education in our great state next year. Thank you again for being here.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Stay with us, because we're going to be right back with Envision Utah. We'll talk about how they're responding to the rapid growth here in the state of Utah. Stay with us. Our last guest today on the program is Ari Bruning, the Chief Executive Officer at Envision Utah. And Ari, we wanted to talk about a program that is underway at Envision Utah in cooperation with the state of Utah. And it's to basically take a look at the growth in the state. And I like the title, Growing Our Growth. As a matter of fact, when Laura Hansen was with us at a KSL editorial board, she said, and you said, that you'd like this to become just as common a phrase in the state of Utah as slow the flow. I remember that from years and years and years ago. It has stuck. Let's talk about guiding our growth and how important that is.
Yeah, so we are all familiar with the growth that is with us in Utah. It's been with us for decades. We grow because we're a great place to live. And then that growth in turn then can create some challenges that threaten those great things we all love about Utah. And so that's why we are partnering with the governor's office and others to take a look into the future and say, what can we do in order to shape that growth in a way that maintains the quality of life that we all enjoy, so that our children and grandchildren can enjoy Utah the same way that we have.
For our viewers, I need to be upfront. I have a foot in both worlds here because I'm very proud to be on the executive committee and a past chairman of Envision Utah, and I've seen this discussion grow. And it wasn't long ago that for the first time, the concern about growth and the negative attitudes about growth in the state really took an interesting turn.
Yeah, we survey Utahns regularly, and we recently saw a greater concern about growth than we have ever seen. I get it. You know, you sit in traffic, and or or you hear about our water situation.
You want to go skiing?
Yeah, exactly. I get that, but we can't just wish the growth away. We're such a great place that our children stay, and others come and join us. And it's more about finding a way to guide that growth, because you can't really stop it. You know, other places have tried. Southern California tried.
Right.
And by trying to keep people out with zoning, what they've done is they've made it completely unaffordable. That's right. And that's not what we want to do here.
The other thing, too, and this was pointed out to me years and years and years ago when people were talking in a little bit more of a positive way, honestly, about growth, but showing some concern. I remember Governor Levitt, and one day on the air, it was let me speak to the governor, he said, you know, the growth in our state is homegrown. It's our kids. It's our grandkids. That's the vast majority of growth. So do we really want to stop that and have them all move away?
Yeah, historically it's been about 2/3 of our growth has been our own kids and grandkids, and I don't know how much of the other third is our kids and grandkids coming back either.
Right.
A substantial portion of that is people who were born in Utah or have some connection to Utah. So this is not strangers just moving into Utah for the most part.
Describe this program and describe what's coming, because we all have a chance to participate in this, and maybe you can give us an indication of where this is going, what will be asked, and what will happen to the information.
Yeah, so we're partnering with the governor's office, so we have powerful elected officials listening, right? So we want to know from Utahns what option, what path do you want to take? So we offer different options for 4 different topics that we heard from Utahns that they're most concerned about. So that's housing, water, transportation, and open space and recreation. So you can go online at guidingourgrowth.utah.gov, and you'll see different options for each of those topics, and you tell us which ones you like the best, which ones you say, no, I don't want to go there. Right. And then there's also a list of big ideas that we heard from Utahns, different ideas for what we could do, different policy options, for example, and you can click whichever ones of those you think we ought to pursue. Now, this is tailored for where people live, so it'll ask you your zip code, and then if you're in urban Utah, you get one version of the survey. If you're in rural Utah, you get a different version, because we don't want to be talking about trains and skyscrapers with people from Paiute County, right? So a little bit customized for where you live.
I thought it was interesting when you were presenting this along with Laura to the editorial board, the fact that it is so, first of all, user-friendly. Second of all, sometimes we think when there's an online survey that maybe only younger people will participate in it. But there's a real outreach program to get this into everybody's hands and to make everybody aware of it and walk them through participating.
Yeah, so we really want everybody to participate, and we're working with a whole variety of partners to try to reach different population groups, whether those are geographic or whether it's age groups or racial or ethnic groups or different income groups, and we're trying to get a representative spectrum of all Utahns. Ideally, we'd get every Utahn to go weigh in.
Yeah, and that's feasible nowadays with something like this. If everybody really has an interest, if you really care about the growth, if you really care about what direction the growth goes, you can have a voice here. I was also impressed that built into this, and this isn't designed to steer anything, it's just we tend to contradict ourselves occasionally, especially when we go from, well, topic 1 to maybe down to topic 3 and so on. A little thing comes on that will actually tell you that kind of contradicts something that you checked earlier.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we want our cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah,
and,
right. I do.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to actually educate people about the different trade-offs of different decisions. So, you know, if you say one thing on water and something else on transportation and you can't really do both, we're trying to flag that for people to help them understand, and then they can try to resolve that conflict if they so choose.
For those of you who work so hard on putting this together and have envisioned, you know, this discussion about growth and this participation in growth, is there anything that you anticipate? We don't want to put a spin on it or anything, but what do you anticipate might be the feelings of Utahns right now, and how seriously will that be taken by our leaders and those who really make the decisions?
Yeah, well, I'm honestly really curious to see what we hear.
Exactly.
I know housing is registered as our top concern with people, and we're trying to make sure people understand, first of all, that it's a supply and demand issue. So more supply means housing costs come down, and so we're trying to see where people fall on that spectrum. How much do you want to open up housing options everywhere? I really don't know yet what we're going to find, but I will tell you that people are committed to listen to what Utahns say, and I don't know. This isn't you know, it's not a referendum or a vote necessarily, but when you get a lot of Utahns saying I want to go this direction, then you know, the governor's office will pay attention to that when they put together their budget or policy recommendations. The legislature will listen to that, and local government also will listen to that. They're not bound to follow it, but we will be able to tell them. Your voters said this is the kind of future that they want to see.
Yeah. How do people participate? What's the simple ABC to do it?
Yeah, so go to guidingourgrowth.utah.gov, and just right there in the center of the page, you click and it'll pull up the survey and ask you your zip code, so you get your customized survey, and hopefully it's pretty straightforward for you.
Ari, I so appreciate you joining us on Sunday Edition. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm going to be very interested in the results.
Yeah, me too.
Everybody will be. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this episode of Sunday Edition. A very happy Mother's Day to all of you, and we hope that you'll join us again next week. And music and the spoken word, that's coming up next.